Hey guys, this is a Patreon Q&A. If you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description and you can sign up there. I'm also going to be going into spoilers for all of the series that I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Guti asks, what do you think about the possibility that Xebec is still alive? In episode 437, around the 5-minute mark, there's a frozen guy who looks similar to Xebec. They even say that he might be preserved for the future. So this is a fun question. So let me go to the manga page that this episode is adapting. So we see level 5 of Impel Down, and there's like these prisoners inside of a frozen cage, and they're looking over to one of them, and the guy's like, no, he's done for. Is he dead? Or maybe he was frozen to go to the future. Idiot. So yeah, this guy does resemble Rocks for sure, and it would be incredible if Oda somehow had planned all of this, and that was in fact Rocks, and he might still be alive and or coming back. But that's just not the case, or at least this guy for sure isn't Rocks. So first of all, if he was Rocks, he would definitely be in level 6, because that's where all like the most powerful of the powerful would be, and Rocks was, one of the strongest pirates to ever live. So he wouldn't just be in level 5, first of all. But also, believe it or not, we actually get a name on this guy because he's listed in one of the Weaver cards pertaining to like the Impel Down arc, and his name is Cairo Correo. So yeah. However, we could still touch on the theory or just the possibility of Rocks in general just still being alive, because that's always possible. So let's just go over who Rocks was real quick in case some of you need to be refreshed on him. So I guess you could say Rocks and the Rocks Pirates were like the original Yonko crew, or at least one of them. Although I think it says in like the Ace novel that Yonkos or emperors weren't really a thing until like we got Shanks, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. So I don't think that was like a term 38, 40 years ago when Rocks was in his prime. But anyway, in Rocks' crew, we had young Big Mom, young Whitebeard, and young Kaido. And apparently Rocks was such a bad guy that the government itself covered up much of his deeds. And apparently he also broke many of the world's taboos. So there's like no information in the public record about the Rocks Pirates. And the big famous incident that involves Rocks and the Rocks Pirates was the God Valley incident that happened 38 years ago, where he and the crew was wiped out at that point by Garp teaming up with Roger. And this was apparently to protect the Celestial Dragons and their slaves who were at this place. Sengoku also says that Rocks' full name is Rocks D. Xebec, and that he is no longer alive. So is that confirming right there that he's dead? I mean, probably, but this is One Piece and, anything is possible. But in my opinion, he probably is dead, but he may be living on through Blackbeard, because I think that Blackbeard is tied to Rocks in some way. Either he is like straight up Rocks' son, because that's very possible. It's implied that Rocks died 38 years ago, and Blackbeard is like 40 at this point, 38 pre-time skip. And I also talked about in my video that I made a couple weeks ago about Shanks being like a celestial dragon, was that Shanks was likely adopted by Roger at this God Valley incident, because Shanks is 39, and that also lines up with this date, and also how I speculated about him being a celestial dragon. And this could be like another parallel to them, as where we have Marshall D. Teach having a beef with Shanks the Celestial Dragon. It could also be because they both come from the God Valley incident. Shanks coming from whatever Celestial Dragon was there, and Blackbeard coming from Rocks. Now also, we know that Blackbeard didn't really have a family. That's why he was taken up by Whitebeard. That's another parallel. Whitebeard, a former member of the Rocks Pirates. And then of course, like I said, the whole D thing, Rocks D. Xebec, Marshall D. Teach. And also Blackbeard's ship is called the Saber of Xebec. That's been like one of the big lingering things about him and his connection to Rocks for a while now that made us think this initially. But also, they kind of resemble each other. Also, Sengoku says that Rocks was Roger's first foe and perhaps his greatest. And we know that Luffy has inherited the will of Roger, who has also inherited the will of Joy Boy. So that could be another parallel there. As we know, Blackbeard is Luffy's greatest rival and vice versa. This could just be a retelling of Rocks versus Roger, and possibly whatever the initial rivalry was with Joy Boy, and maybe there was like a bad D as well back then, which, just led led to rocks in general. Now, the other thing about him possibly being tied to Blackbeard is that it was said that rocks broke many of the world's taboos. And as we know, one of the biggest taboos in the world, at least according to the world government and emu's imposed law on them, is like you don't talk about the history of the world and stuff like that. And I'm assuming that's what rocks was all about, like uncovering history and telling people about it. And also one of Rox's big thing is that he wanted to become the king of the world. And of course, when Sterry said if one were to sit on the empty throne, then they would be considered the king of the world. So it's possible that Rox had a lot of inside information on what was actually going on with the One Piece world. And it's also possible this is how Blackbeard came to know the stuff that he does, because we know that he's like, you know, very knowledgeable of things. He said he had like this whole plan mapped out, and it started with him getting the Yami Yami no Mi. So it's also possible that Rox originally had the Yami Yami no Mi, although it's pretty interesting that nobody's ever talked about that or said like, hey, you have Rox's fruit. But then again, it comes back to them kind of being secretive about the Rox pirates, not only just the world government, but also pirates and the ones that were involved in his crew. And also, I talked about this in another video I made a couple weeks ago about how Blackbeard may or may not have some kind of mythical fruit or something, because he says that this power chose me. When he said that, that could be referring to like, hey, Rox originally had this fruit, so therefore he wanted me to have it because I have inherited his will. I mean, we'll find out sooner or later, but there's definitely some kind of connection there. William H asks, how do you feel about Attack on Titan's wrap up so far? I feel like it comes off a bit disingenuous to label everything the final season and then break it into multiple portions over the years. Do you think the last season, part 3, should be in a movie? So I understand why they're doing this, at least from a marketing standpoint. Maybe they didn't initially intend for it to be dragged out this long, because I think when they started production on the final season, the manga wasn't even wrapped up yet. So them just calling it the final season over and over again, I guess just gets more eyes on it, because you know, you the viewer, you know, casual or not, are thinking, oh, it's the final season, I gotta watch. But then they kind of keep doing it, and it could come to incompetence possibly, but in the end, you know, it is what it is. It's media clickbait, if you will. But I don't think they should wrap it up in a movie. That's like multiple episodes worth of content that they could stretch out over the weeks for the fans. And I think it would just be a waste to put it in like a 90-minute movie, to be honest. MajinBoros asks, what if Zombie Man had access to all the wonder weapons in Call of Duty Zombies in his arsenal? What would his disaster level be, and how far could he go with the cadres? So I wasn't really familiar with these wonder weapons or Call of Duty Zombies, to be honest. So I looked up a video on them, and you know, they seem fun and everything, but it's really hard to gauge their strength in comparison to like the One Punch Man world, because they're ultimately just taking out like these zombie soldiers who I'm assuming are wolf level, maybe some of them are tigers, but I highly doubt they're demons, and even more so doubt that they're dragons. So it's possible that Zombie Man's current arsenal are just as strong as a lot of these wonder weapons, if not even stronger. I mean, some of them are pretty fantastical, these wonder weapons, but it's really hard to say that they would be able to take down cadres or something like that. Delamante asks, Prime Roger Pirates versus the worst generation, who wins? So definitely the Prime Roger Pirates at this point. I mean, you have Prime Rayleigh, Prime Roger, just them two could probably take down the worst generation at this point. I mean, yeah, Kid and Law have gotten their awakenings and took down Big Mom, but I don't see them doing that to Roger or Rayleigh, and you know, who knows how strong Scopper was. And I know this is non-canon, but in the Stampede movie, Douglas Bullitt was apparently a part of the Rogers crew, and he literally soloed the worst generation, and that was pre-Wano power-ups, of course. But just go back to Roger versus Whitebeard, and Whitebeard is implied to be the strongest pirate to ever live. So I think at this point, Roger and Rayleigh would be enough to take them down. Misael asks, how far away do you think the fight with Kawaki and Boruto is in the future that we see in the first episode? How many more arcs? Is it still super far away? So I'm sorry, Misael, but I'm like a ultra white belt when it comes to Boruto. I have not followed the series in years, although whenever like a big event happens or, you know, something viral, I'll pay attention to it. But I'll say with my limited knowledge that I think it's probably still a few years away. I haven't heard anything about Boruto remotely coming to an end, and I do have knowledge of many other series that are currently ending or in their final arcs. And, fortunately, Boruto is not one of them. So I'm assuming, we got a while till that happens. Jimmy P asks, how is Blackbeard going to locate Laugh-Tale before Luffy, or is he going to let the Straw Hats do all the legwork and swoop in at the last minute? So to be honest, I thought that this was going to happen for a while now. It does seem like something that Blackbeard would do. And he doesn't seem closer to getting the Road Poneglyph than Luffy does. And it's possible that the last one is at Wano, and he might discover it at the end of this arc, only for Blackbeard to come in and, I don't know, somehow get the information from him. But also, the other part of my theory is that I think Blackbeard, or however he obtains it, is somehow going to leak the information to the entire world. Like, everyone is going to find out at the same time where Laugh-Tale is, and that way we can have the Laugh-Tale arc where everybody shows up at the same time. Like, oh my god, we all know where the One Piece is, so this is, incentive for all of the pirates to finally go after it at the same time. I think that would be an incredible twist. Natedawg asks, do you think part of Saitama is selfishly trying to get Garo to evolve again and again until he's a challenge? He was really mocking him in the latest chapter. So I think part of him might be doing this even though he hasn't openly said it. I think most of what he's doing here is just trying to break through to Garo, trying to get him to turn face again and come back around not only for Tario, but also, to do good, because Saitama probably sees that he is a very valuable hero and that he could do good things, as, he took out Sage Centipede and whatnot. But also, it's very likely that he could be pushing him to, get a challenge out of him, because that is in Saitama's wheelhouse at the same time. Mr. Toby 1018, my boy, asks, later in the story we'll have a new established S-Class. What characters would you like to see in the roster by the end of the series? So at this point, I'm not even sure if we'll have like a new S-Class, because I'm not really sure where the whole hero establishment is headed. I mean, it's going to fall apart soon, I'm thinking, but I don't know if they're going to like make a new one that has like actual rankings to it. They might just have some kind of like hero association or new association or whatever, but then there's like no class rankings. They're just all heroes and that's it. But if there is a new S-Class and they are keeping it traditional like that, like to see Glasses in there, of course, although it's really debatable if he can even get that strong in that amount of time. And then I think the other standouts, or at least who we've been shown who are probably going to join it, are Mizuki, Gearspur, and Suiko. There could be more, but I think those are the standouts at this point. Little Ferrari asks, why/how doesn't Blast know about Drive Knight if he's a disciple of God? So my line of thinking at this point is that Drive Knight, just like Psychos, isn't aware that he is a disciple of God yet. Because we saw that when Psychos had that vision, when she was like visited by God, when she merged with Orochi, she didn't exactly know what was going on. She said it was something like God, but she wasn't like thinking like the God that Homeless Emperor knows of. She was just thinking of like God in general. And it also goes back to when she has like that vision in the webcomic of the perceived future, or the future that God wanted her to see. She still didn't understand exactly what was going on, and definitely didn't know that it was God showing her that. And also when Fubuki is interrogating her in the mind world later, she still doesn't understand exactly what's going on or who God is. So I'm assuming that Drive Knight is probably even less aware of what's going on at this point with God and his influence over him. So therefore Blast really wouldn't know either, because he's too preoccupied with the cube stuff, fighting the space battles and whatever. Pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. Thank you so much. It really does mean so much to me, guys. And again, if you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description. You can sign up there. And if you like the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.